Hello friends, what's up? This is Josh Rose. I want to show you a Last Epoch build today. I've been playing a lot of Last Epoch since the most recent patch, beta 0.8. This game gets better every time a new patch comes out, and starting to figure it out pretty well, and I made a very good build that I enjoyed a lot, and it's the strongest thing that I've played in this game so far. I took it all the way through the endgame monoliths, unlocked all of the timelines, and defeated all of the bosses, including the last boss, and it was pretty breezy and very effective. So let's have a look. So this is a Lich. It's a damage over time build. We're primarily doing necrotic damage. We're using a number of different skills that do damage over time to have generally 3 dots on enemies. Most of the smaller enemies don't live long enough for that, but the bigger enemies you can throw 3 different dot effects on them to deal lots of damage over time. And the build is very good for endgame because you can run a lot of different modifiers on your echoes. So you have 100% critical strike avoidance, so we don't care about any crit mods that enemies have. Also, we don't care about dodge, we don't care about glancing blow. Because this is a dot build, none of those things matter, or enemy crit avoidance also does not matter. And so there's a lot of stuff you can run in your echoes that just don't cause you any troubles, which means, you know, by the time you're up to 30 echoes or so, there's probably, you know, 30-40% of those actually are not causing you any trouble at all. So it makes it very nice for running endgame monoliths. Also, it has really great amounts of leech, and you're leeching on all your damage over time. So you're just constantly leeching with this build, and sometimes you'll see, like right now, my health capped. So it looks like I'm not leeching, but that's part of the build, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the build is very good for clearing. You have these not poisons, you have these necrotic damage curses that just spread all over. So a lot of these packs you just cast once and everything will die. And on bosses you put all 3 of your dots on the boss, as well as some other sources of damage, and they'll generally die pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual build now. So let's look at the skills. We're using Spirit Plague, and this is really our best clear ability. Basically, you throw it on an enemy, it does necrotic damage, and when they die, it'll spread to another target. With Calamitous, it'll actually spread to 2 targets, and with Discharge, it'll spread automatically after 3 seconds. Most enemies will die quickly, and then the plague will just spread all over and wipe out full screens with a single click. Pretty awesome. And it also does global damage over time, which means it's increasing the damage of our other dots, and I'll show you those in a minute. So here are some of the other nodes, just some duration and that sort of thing. More damage, and spread. Then we also use Infernal Shade, which is another damage over time ability. This one is a fire damage over time, and while we are scaling a good amount of necrotic damage, we're also scaling a lot of damage over time and spell damage, and we're investing into a lot of intelligence, and all those things increase the damage of Infernal Shade as well. Plus, why have 1 dot on an enemy when you can have 2? So Infernal Shade works fairly similarly. Puts a ring of fire around an enemy, it'll burn any other enemies nearby, and then it will reattach to other enemies when the first enemy dies if they're close by. So it can also spread around. We also take Legion, which allows us to cast an additional shard, shade rather. Although I don't know that this is worth it. It doesn't feel like I'm able to attach multiple shades in a single click, so this is an experiment. I would probably spec out of this if I were to continue playing the build. Blaze Shade gives you a chance at a bigger AoE, more effective shade, more damage, more area. I definitely suggest taking Lingering Flames so that this ability will wait around on the ground. Then you can just throw it on the ground and enemies will run up and it'll attach to them and spread around. So that way, if you misclick a little or whatever, it's probably still going to work. One thing I need to say about this ability is it's a little bit bugged right now. Sometimes it just does, you throw it at an enemy and it just doesn't attach and it disappears. I'd say that happens maybe 30% of the time, and because it's a damage over time ability, that's not that big of a deal. You can just recast it and then it'll do its damage. but I'd like to see that fixed because it is a little bit annoying that sometimes you have to cast it twice if it doesn't work on the first cast. So those are 2 of our dots. Now we have a third dot, and it is Hungering Souls. Hungering Souls also gives us global increased damage over time. So these 2 skills both combine to give us 150% increased global damage over time if we've used them in the last 5 seconds. This one is 4 seconds, but we're always casting those. So we get 150% increased global damage over time because of these abilities. Also, Hungering Souls has this amazing kill threshold. If it hits anything that has 15% or less health, it will instantly kill it. This is huge on bosses, and a lot of these big boss fights, you're just waiting to whittle them down to that 15%, and then they instantly die, throwing in some base necrotic damage. Now we're also taking this note over here that limits us to 1 soul. Normally you would cast a bunch of projectiles, they would do hit damage, and then they would attach to an enemy and do damage over time. In this case, we only have 1 projectile that we launch, and I'll show you why in a second, but you do get some really nice damage bonuses for only having that 1 projectile. We also have this node Soul Drain, which gives us mana on kill. Take it or leave it, but it's usually Hungering Souls that's getting our kills for us because it has this kill threshold. So you get a little mana back for that. Probably could put that somewhere else. Now let's look at Death Shade. Or Death Seal rather. So we're not casting Hungering Souls directly. Instead, we're using Death Seal, and when we have Death Seal active, Hungering Souls are automatically cast. Now what Death Seal does is it locks our maximum health to whatever it was when we first activated Death Seal. So it stays active for a couple of seconds, I think for 8 seconds with the +3. It'll lock your health at a certain number. It won't lock your health, but it'll prevent it from going above that. And you deal more damage equal to how much health you're missing, and you take less damage. I'm activating it generally at full health. You don't need to activate it at low health for it to be a very useful skill because it's constantly launching all these Hungering Souls, and then we increase the frequency that they're being launched at. It gives us haste once it ends, so we run very quickly for a while after it's over, which we get haste for 8 seconds when it ends. And it's just a couple seconds of cooldown, so 4.6. So you have this up most of the time. And it also does these waves of, death waves that go off every second and just do pulses of damage for us. Got some extra area on that. But primarily it's for launching Hungering Souls. And when it does that, it keeps up this global increased damage over time buff. So that's really useful. That just makes all of our other skills better. And really the rate at which it casts these Hungering Souls, which have very nice damage, they do a lot of damage. And then finally, we're using Transplant, just a movement skill. The best reason to use it is because you can have Bone Armor. And Bone Armor gives you a bunch of extra armor, which is a very strong defensive stat in this game. It mitigates against all types of damage. I think all types of hits, I should say, not damage over time. But unlike other games, armor is not just for dealing with physical damage. It will help against all types of damage. I'm also taking these 2 fear nodes that will cause enemies to run away from us when we use Transplant. And, and a little bit of increased global damage here. So once you use it, you have a little extra global damage for a bit. So those are the skills that we're using. And let me show you the gear for a second, because there's not a lot of really important gear here. There's not a lot of damage on this gear. You'll notice it's not that good, and it's mostly just defensive stuff. I don't think we have any even dot multipliers on any gear. I mean, there's nothing very good here. Aside from, I managed to drop a staff with tier 6 necrotic damage, which is really useful. Put some increased damage over time on it, but it's kind of a low spell damage roll. But overall, very useful for boosting our necrotic damage. And then I'm wearing Woven Flesh, which gives you 100% critical strike avoidance and lots of life leech. The critical strike avoidance is huge. Just like I said, it lets you run all those big crit echo modifiers, and you just don't have to care about them, and that's really huge. Otherwise, it's just defenses. Eterra's Path, you don't need these. I was just playing around with them. You're better off with a different set of boots, probably, that fit in with the build a little bit better. Those are not necessary. Idols, again, there are not any. I mean, some of these are just bad. I don't know. I have a stun duration just for some void resist. Little damage over time, some increased health. Again, stun duration. I didn't bother going too hard on getting good idols because the build was pretty cruisy. I went all the way through each timeline, all the way to the end game, and beat the last boss. So I didn't spend that much time refining this gear, and it didn't seem too necessary. Now let's just look at the passives, and you'll know what you need to know. The Bone Aura gives us a bunch of armor. There's not a lot of good stuff, to be honest, in the Acolyte tree. We want to get right up to Lich, so you just need to spend 20 points in the Acolyte base class. Take some intelligence, we take some armor, we take some vitality, and that's it. So just some kind of basic stuff. And then there's really good stuff in the Lich class. So what I would do right away is take spell damage leached as health, because this allows you to leech off of your damage over time. Super useful. Now we're going to get some better leech later, but right at the beginning, this is going to carry you in terms of being able to leech back any health that you're missing or losing. And we do lose health, as you can see, and I'll explain that in a second. Increased necrotic damage, increased damage in general. These nodes aren't the best. They're probably worth putting somewhere else at some point. I was going as a low life build for a little bit, so I used them, but probably worth respecking those into something else. Got some vitality and some health regen, which we need because we have some stuff that drains our health. Unclosing Wounds gives us a huge damage increase, but you can see that it also comes with a health drain. Its current health drained by 6% per second. So with the health regen that we have, eventually it sort of stops. If we just pop some potions, you can see it's not that it drains super fast, and at the rate that you leech, it'll be full pretty much always. But taking these nodes allows you to take this extra damage without having a really uncomfortable degen. Then we take intelligence and spell damage. We take some necrotic penetration here. We take 100% damage over time on recent kill, which is really useful when you're clearing. It just gives you a huge boost of extra dot damage, and that's pretty much everything. So it makes clearing much more efficient, and a huge boost of just straight up base necrotic damage. And in this game, base damage is almost always better than multipliers. So go 10 out of 10 there. And then at the top of the tree, we have some really good nodes. Damage leeches health. This is any damage, 5% plus 25% increased health leech. So you're going to leech like crazy on this build. So let's look at this health leech really quick. It's pretty intense. You just pretty much instantly fill up. Very, very, very useful. Constantly leeching health, and of course, because you're a damage over time build, you're running in circles. You're not standing around attacking the enemy, so you've always got those. You basically just run around like if you're facing a boss. You just keep these different dot skills going. You keep your death shade up, and you're just always leeching. And all you got to do is run in circles, and there you see the infernal shade did not attach. Okay, that time it did. So occasionally that will happen. But this is all you have to do against bosses. So it's very easy to avoid certain boss mechanics. You just refresh your dots sometimes, run in circles, stay close enough that you can hit them with those death pulses and with your hungering souls. Okay, so to finish off looking at the passives, we also have Corrosive Consciousness, which this is huge. It gives you 56% increased spell damage. These are all spells, and it gives you 56% increased damage over time. And of course, that's pretty much the main, it's definitely the main source of our damage, though we have a few other things that also benefit from the spell damage. But so all your damage over time is getting double boosted here. And yeah, I don't know, not much else to say about this build. It's been very strong. And you can see that we did all of these different timelines and defeated the final boss, and have not done the empowered timelines yet, just because I'm done with this build for now. I've played it a lot and I had a lot of fun, and I've moved on to something new. So that's it for this build. I'm going to have another guide coming soon. I think I'm working on another build that's turning out pretty good. So I'll share that with you when it's done. But if you decide to play this build, let me know. If you have any advice on how to make this build better, let me know. And stay tuned to the channel because I'm going to have more Last Epoch build guides and content in the future. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later.